Although the Yorknew Arc of Hunter x Hunter is treated as a standout achievement for both the series and shonen demographic in general, that has many reasons for being one of the two most obvious choices for the series' best arc. One section of it that doesn't get enough praise is Zepile's introduction, and its focus on counterfeiting techniques, something integral for both the arc's plot and themes. The most obvious use of these doctoring methods is in Gon and Killua creating a new opening to escape Nobunaga, but the idea of doctoring items can be considered a core part of Yorknew's narrative, with many things not being as they seem. There is of course how Kotopi utilizes methods 3 and then 1 of this list when replacing the auction items, but the ideas of counterfeiting go further, as very little in the arc is discernible at face value, be it Kurapika's chains and use of in to make a successful ruse, Hisoka making a forged fortune, or the troop faking their deaths. Attempting to fool another is more prevalent than any other arc in the series, as expected of the one closest to being called a crime drama. On top of this, Zepile's use of a statue containing treasure acts as a metaphor to the emotional core of the arc as a whole, with most of its characters being more than they seem. This is most notable with the treasure trove of characterization and sense of value amongst the Phantom Troop, beyond what the audience may have ever expected before going into this part of the story, but also applies to many of the other characters integral to it, be it Kurapika's need to defend the friendships he's found, rather than being the cold avenger he's tried to be on the outside, or Light Nostrad seeming to be a typical protective father, with it gradually becoming more obvious that his priorities are far more selfish, desperate, and overall more complex than his introduction would imply. A less obvious aspect of his display with the vault is in the topic of cauterization, as a technique of filling a hole created is indicative of what would happen to the Phantom Troop. Even after losing 2, technically 3, members, they are able to find new legs to fill these spaces, as well as fix the head, and continue functioning until Hisoka decides to go on a rampage. It also lines up with Kurapika's arc, as the hole created through the loss of the Kurta has been partially filled through his friends and job, giving Kurapika a sense of longing and purpose respectively beyond revenge once more, that he ultimately chooses to go towards rather than chipping away further at the hollow trove of revenge. At least for now. A chipped and cauterized vault can be considered a metaphor towards the Phantom Troop and the Nostrad family by the end of the Yorknew conflict, both having had many of their precious jewels taken, but still not being destroyed. Perhaps the most notable overlap between appraisal and characters though is Zepile's later comments on Gon's sense of morality, which, in the 2011 anime especially, foreshadows how Gon's personal interests would end up leading him down a darker path, which makes his path in the Chimera Ant arc a natural evolution. It's also during the events leading up to and during Zepile's elaboration on the forgery works that the series solidly establishes that creations that a lot of passion and effort go into creating carry traces of aura, even if the creators cannot use Nen, something that adds to the power system beyond the broader rules of the previous arc. This, along with Kurapika's later explanation on how he was able to conjure chains, hammers in how care and diligence towards something can bring out one's aura, and tie into how dedicated the Nen system is to establishing how one's Hatsu can allow one to infer a lot about one's personality or upbringing from so little as one ability. This point of personal value versus monetary gain Gon brings up also ties into the emotional core of the Phantom Troop, a group of villains whose value is rarely in the eyes of the beholder, with there being as much validity to those viewing them as entirely sympathetic as those who say they are entirely irredeemable. What is clear to all though is that the lack of value placed on its founding members relegated to Meteor City is what caused them to find value in each other through this shared sense of longing and loneliness. Zepile's final lesson on doctrine items to Gon and Killua in creating a new opening isn't only a method they use to escape Nobunaga, but Togashi's philosophy behind conflict resolutions in this arc, with most methods coming through he and his characters thinking outside the box of the standard shonen narrative. Do Gon and Killua find a new nen technique or knowledge to grow stronger? No, they aren't ready to be more than a circumstantial distraction to the truth, and it wouldn't make sense for the contrary to be true. Does Kurapika take the expected route of defeating Chrollo one-on-one? No, he captures Chrollo through a precise strategy, and conflict is ended through compromise. This is an elaborate way to say the arc subverts audience expectations. Modern fictional disasters have tainted that phrase. In terms of what's expected of the typical handling of conflict and resolution within the demographic, with Togashi choosing to take the vault from the side rather than the most obvious route. Zepile quickly befriending Leorio also fits well, as Zepile's focus on money makes him in many ways what Leorio would be if his proclaimed goal in his introduction was its entirety. His ability to appraise the character of others adds to this, with what Senritsu would say of Leorio's nature, and give credence to his popularity in the election his genuine and selfless attitude gave him. Overall, though Zepile isn't the most fantastic character, he has a perfectly efficient supporting role, whose place in the narrative acts as a microcosm of the wider themes and plot points within the arc, that add layers to the ideas explored that make the Yorknew City Arc as close to perfection as possible. Thank you for having watched through this analysis. I do have several others in mind for Hunter x Hunter in the future, so subscribe so you don't miss them, and I'll see you later.